Alright, so this week we're working on my 1989 R31 Skyline Wagon. Just got a free set of wheels that I threw on it so I could clean the TIs for a cruise I've got next week. And we're going to do a turbo conversion. So rip the intake off, rip the exhaust off, pull the computer out, change the fuel rail, bolt all the turbo gear back up with a crossover pipe. We're not going to worry about an intercooler this time around, and hope to God it doesn't blow the engine up before I can put together a decent turbo setup that's reliable. So see if we can get that done this week. Alright, so I've removed the airbox, the intake pipe, and undone all of the nuts except for one, just to hold it in place for the extractors. Making a pile of bits and pieces, and just got to jack the car up now to get underneath and pull the extractors off with the catalytic converter. Okay, so I've fitted my oil drain into the factory position, and I've cracked this oil feed line and that water feed line. They are kind of hard to get to once the turbo's in, so I've just cracked them with it out, and then I'll remove them because, as you can see, they sort of leak a little bit of fluid, and I'll put them on with the banjo bolts once the turbo's in. Alright, so I just got the fuel rail out with the injector still attached. I left the fuel pressure regulator in there because I don't have a VL turbo one, but apparently those ones work just fine for standard power boost. And yeah, it was a real pain in the ass. I've never taken one out without splitting the intake manifold before, but I'm too lazy to take the strut brace off or re-bleed the coolant. I did have to disconnect this one coolant line here, but I didn't spill too much, so hopefully that's alright. Yeah, as you can see, this one's got whatever colour those are, injector tops, and this one's got apparently brown tops. I'm too colourblind to tell the difference, but I'm assured that these are the right ones, so we'll just suck it and see. Something to note before you put your fuel rail in with your injectors on, make sure you have these little injector O-rings on there. I threw this car together one day and I took these off to clean them, and then didn't even think before I put the fuel rail back in, and had a horrible vacuum leak and the car wouldn't run, and I couldn't figure out why. And yeah, it was very embarrassing when I worked out that it was a lack of injector O-rings. So yeah, make sure you double check that before you throw them in, and make sure there aren't old ones sitting there off the fuel rail. I found one in injector hole 5 that came off of the old injector, so I'd have to dig that out. Alright, so I ended up getting the fuel rail in. Yeah, it wasn't the greatest fit. These bolt holes don't really line up, neither does the back, and then these outlets and inlets don't exactly line up either, so I had to do a bit of bending and some dodgy hose work, but that'll do for now. I'm sure I'll fix it up at some point. I've also got the exhaust manifold on. I had to die-grind out some of the holes for the bolts to go through because they didn't quite line up for some reason, and I've also test fitted the turbo a couple of times and clocked the housing to make sure it sits nicely. And yeah, I've just got to get some silicone joiners and a couple other bits and pieces to get it all together, so this crossover pipe will fit nicely like this, and it should look great. So hopefully tomorrow we can get stuck into some of that. Alright, so we spent the morning going for a parts run, grabbed a whole bunch of stuff to assemble all the water lines and all the feed lines for the turbo. Got Luke here assembling said bits and pieces. Got a wastegate actuator now, a whole bunch of gaskets and seals and all sorts of stuff. So hopefully we'll throw it on this afternoon and maybe start it by the end of the week. Alright, so we got the turbo in and mounted. It's looking pretty good. All our water lines and everything run. All we have to do now is grab some hose clamps for the intake, and also for this water feed line. So this basically comes from the heater box in the cabin and runs all the way down to the front where the water neck is and the thermostat, and then this section here feeds off to the turbo. So I just need to get some extra hose clamps for this one here, and then 2 for there, then there for the intake, and that's pretty much it for the setup. The only other thing we've got to run is figure out how to mount some pipes going from the intake of the turbo down here just up to the airbox, which is here, and make an exhaust. And then I think we just got to mount up a boost gauge and put the ECU in, and that's about it. It's done. Alright, so we got a lot done today. Got the turbo all mounted up, all the lines run, all the gaskets fitted, got the crossover pipe in, all the hose clamps done up on that, got all the spark plugs reconnected again. Finished getting, walking Ipswich, getting burnouts everywhere. Finished getting all the water lines hooked up, everything bolted on, all the hose clamps done up. I just got to refill the radiator. Unfortunately, I still haven't managed to figure out how to connect the Airbox airflow meter to the turbo inlet yet. I'm going to figure that out still. Pretty much all that's left to do is join the dump to the catalytic converter, connect up the intake, wire in the ECU, which is like 3 wires I think, and run the boost gauge, and then it's pretty much right to start. So hopefully in the next 2 days should be good to go. Alright, so I've already removed the old ECU out of its home down there, and just getting the new one ready to throw in. It's I got it off eBay. The dude gets naturally aspirated ECUs and then chips them so they can handle turbo injectors, but he doesn't put knock boards in them, so it'll do the job, but it's not ideal. So I'll just have to keep an eye on the timing and turn that down and turn the boost down so it doesn't blow up. But should get me moving at the very least, and then hopefully I'll be able to find a VL turbo ECU, or maybe I'll go to something different afterwards. But yeah, hopefully this will sort it out. So there's a slight difference between VL ECUs and R31 ECUs and their subsequent wiring harnesses, and that's with the priming of the fuel pump. So when you turn an R31 on and a VL on, they prime for 5 seconds and then stop the fuel pumps, so that if you're in an accident, the fuel pump doesn't just keep spurting fuel out of a broken fuel line. When the engine's not running, so when it doesn't see ignition, it stops the fuel. So when you put a VL ECU into an R31 harness, you have to splice a relay into a couple of pins on the wiring harness down there, so that it will do that and not just keep the fuel pump running constantly. So the guy that sells this, or sold this ECU, I don't even know if he's still on eBay, he actually sold this little kit, and it comes with some instructions here with pictures and everything. Oh, I can't really see it. There you go. And yeah, it does a really good job, I hope. So we'll throw it in and see what happens. Alright, here's the point of no return. That's the wire I'm looking for there. Found it. Where are we? Here we are. This one just here. Let's get some side cutters, give it a snip. Oh gosh, now we're into it. Alright, so I've got this white wire that we cut connected onto the new harness, and this one here scotch locked on. I'm not super keen on the scotch locks, but I figure at least if it doesn't work I don't have to unsolder stuff, so I'll just leave it there for now. It shouldn't get damaged or full of dirt or anything tucked in behind here, so that's fine. And then the earth cable up there, so I just got to find somewhere to mount this relay and throw it all back together, and then power the whole system with this red wire. Alright, so the ECU's all bolted in. Pretty much looks factory, because it basically is. And you just got the relay mounted up just there. I'm not really keen on that position, but it seemed to be the easiest spot to put it. So it'll have to do for now. Just gotta run this power wire across to somewhere, and that'll be it. Alright, so the ECU install and wiring went great. I just tested it, and the fuel pump cuts out after 5 seconds of priming. But the next issue I've come across is these little injector hose clamp line things seem to leak. So let's see if I can push on this one. When I had the system priming, it was just leaking out of here, and I tried to tighten this hose clamp, and I actually stripped it because it's already tightened at its maximum. Like, these hoses are pretty old and pretty hard, but you can't change them on these without really destroying the injectors, or at least I don't know how to. So I think I might just pull off all the clamps. I've already taken one off under there, and change all the ones that are leaking with spiral style hose clamps, and just tighten the hell out of them and hope for the best. I really don't want to have to take the rail back off, so we'll see what happens. Alright, so I'm just going to make up a quick little mid pipe from the dump to the catalytic converter. So we got some 2.5 inch just mild stuff. There's one flange there, the other flange is bolted to the cat already. Get ourselves a MIG welder, bit of gas, a couple of tools, some grinders, safety glasses, the usual. And yeah, we're just going to cut some stuff up and fit it. I'm not really going to show the process. I'm sure there's plenty of videos out there that do. I'll just show you, this is what I started with, and I'll show you the finished product when I'm done.